This is Ken Hance, best storyteller in Texas. We got a great guest today, Congressman Tony Gonzales, and we're glad to have him. And the saying of the day, I'm going to let you do the saying of the day that you got in the Navy that you like and you use. And let's hear the saying of the day.
It's results, not excuses.
Results, not excuses. I love that. And he was a chief petty officer in the Navy. And the staff sergeants in the Army and the chief petty officers in the Navy run those organizations.
That's right.
And it run day to day. And if something doesn't happen, then they get jumped about it.
Oh, yeah. I retired a Master Chief. So after 20 years, did that. And everyone says the Chiefs are the backbone of the Navy, and it's absolutely right.
Yeah, oh, it is. Yeah. There's no question about that. Tony, where were you born?
Yeah, I was born in an Army base in Alabama. So in Anniston, Alabama was where my father was stationed at the time.
And he was in the Army.
He was in the Army. Yeah.
What position?
He was a medic. He was a sergeant, and actually he was a private at the time. He was a private in the Army. Yeah, 2 months old though. He left. He left real fast. Part of the story.
And so your mom raised you.
Yeah.
And where?
In San Antonio. Yeah, we're all from Texas. So my mom moved with my father, and kind of as he went into the service, that didn't work out. So at 2 months old, she comes back home to San Antonio and raises me. She goes on and remarries a couple times, and it was not good. I mean, my mother is amazing. She's a saint. She's good at a lot of things. Picking men was not one of them.
Best
that's right.
Prerogative.
Yeah.
But did you have your grandparents close by, or aunts and uncles, or?
Yeah, so at 5 years old, she remarries. Very abusive environment. I remember spending time in the battered women's shelter in San Antonio. And matter of fact, I was just visited there a few days ago, and walking through those halls again, it's pretty amazing to go. There I was as a kid, walking these halls, and now it feels like a lifetime later. I'm representing the area that this shelter's out of. So that was kind of rough growing up. And then my grandparents essentially raised me, and we moved from San Antonio, small little town, Camp Wood, 500 people in this town.
Where is that?
It's about 38 miles from Uvalde.
Okay.
Yeah. Out in the hill country there.
And that's where your grandparents live?
Yep. We moved out there and had a small little ranch. And funny enough, it was my grandmother's birthday, and she had bought 2 billy goats. She had bought them to eat them, right? And I go, we can't eat these goats. And she's like, oh, no, I'm eating these goats. And so I worked her. That was my first lobbying job, basically.
How old were you?
I had to be maybe 7, 8, right around there. And I'm just working her day and night. Finally, she's like, all right, enough. She goes, I'm only going to eat one of the goats. And I go, no, we can't eat these goats. And I dug in a little bit more. So we had no intention of raising goats. So fast forward 4 years, we had a herd of Spanish goats and sheep and ducks and pigs, you name it.
Did you ever sell those goats?
We did. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we sure did.
So somebody ate them.
Yeah, somebody ate them. Wasn't us.
But you didn't want to see it.
We didn't. I was having none of it. Having none of it.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, that was good.
And so your grandparents and your mom had a big influence on you.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And that were you active in a local church, or?
Oh yeah.
You went to what church?
Yeah, St. Mary Magdalene's in San Antonio. It's actually the church we go to now still. My mother was baptized there. I was baptized there. Some of my children were baptized there. Now, when I was in Camp Wood, we went to the church there in Camp Wood as well. But faith had always been a big part of my life. And and honestly, in the Navy as well, basically going, life is about more than just you. It's about others. Serving, you know this better than anyone. Serving, you put others before yourself, the sacrifices you go through. So that was always a big part of who I was, or who I am.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to high school in Edison in San Antonio. So we move out to the country, Camp Wood. My grandfather catches a second heart attack, so they wanted to move closer to town. And so we ended up moving to Devine, pretty close to San Antonio there. And I finished out my middle school years. Well, then I'm 15 at the time, and I asked my grandmother, I was like, hey, will you let me go live with my mother again? I got 2 younger brothers. Family's everything to me. She reluctantly lets me go live with my mother, but nothing had changed. It was still this abusive, chaotic environment. So, Ken, I've lived on my own since I was 15. So just...
Well, where did you went to live with her, and then did you move out and move in?
I did.
Where did you live?
Yeah, I had a little apartment. I had an apartment. I was working.
Who was paying?
I was paying for everything. I had a car. I had insurance. I had grocery.
What were you doing to be able to earn that much money?
Yeah, I was, believe it or not, I was a door-to-door newspaper subscription salesman for the San Antonio Express News. So, and I was pretty damn good at it. And I just worked my guts out. And it kind of, for the rest of my life, gave me these skills where you knock on a door, you have no idea what's behind that door. You get flame sprayed, you pick your pants up, and you go to the next door. Because if you don't eat, right?
Yeah.
So, I did that for 3 years.
Were you involved with your little brothers at all, or did you get to be around them much? Or?
Not really. I mean, I was kind of scrapping through life myself. It's when I really joined the Navy, and it was a time where I'd gotten burnt out with sales. It happens to anytime you do with sales.
But you got out of high school what year?
99. So
from Edison.
From Edison, yeah, and I'm actually a half credit away from graduating. I'm about to graduate. I worked this whole time to get through this, and my grandfather, who taught me everything, taught me how to hunt, taught me how to fish, drive, chase women, shave. He taught me everything, right? He passes away. So down this spiral I go. I drop out of high school. I'm not doing sales anymore. I'm working at this glass factory. It's a very dark time for me. And it was when this foreman pulls me aside and he goes, "Hey, Tony, I'm working with all these convicts." And he goes, "Tony, I know why they're here. Why the hell are you here?" And it was a moment in my life where God kind of goes, "Hey, you need to get back on your path."
And that, do you remember the guy's name, or just
I don't.
He just was a supervisor?
Yeah, he was. He was just the.
And he knew why the former convicts were working there, but he wondered, well, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, bright young guy, just stood out. But that was incredible. So I actually went to the Army recruiter. I mentioned my father was in the Army. My grandfather served in World War II. He was in the Army. And I always thought I was going to serve, so I go to the Army recruiter, and he goes, "Yeah, this is great. You scored well in your ASVAB, your entrance exam." But he goes, "We need you to get a GED." And I'm like, I'm a half credit away from graduating. If I wanted to do that, I'd have done that 3 years ago. He goes, "Sorry, you got to get a GED." My cousin was in the Navy. My older cousin was in the Navy. And he goes, "Tony, you should join the Navy." I'm like, well, first off, I don't know how to swim, so that sounds like a bad idea. 2, I don't like boats. I don't like the water. I don't like sailors. And he goes, "Just go. You don't have to be on a ship." And so I actually, in San Antonio, went to the Navy recruiter, and he's like, "Boy, do we got a deal for you." He's like, "We can make you a cryptologist." I'm like, "That sounds pretty fancy. I mean, what is that?" He goes, "I have no idea." And he gets this piece of paper, and he's reading this piece of paper. He's like, top secret clearance, working with National Security Agency, working with computers. This was late 90s. I was like, that sounds pretty good. But that's not what sold me. The Navy had a program where you could get your high school diploma while you were in service. So I learned to swim when they pushed me in the deep end of the pool in Great Lakes in boot camp. And I got my high school diploma from the state of Florida when I was stationed in Pensacola, Florida.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. So when you went in, you start in San Antonio, and you go in the Navy.
Yeah.
And where did they send you the first? How long were you in San Antonio?
No. So I enlisted. So I shipped out of San Antonio. My first duty station was Florida, Pensacola, Florida. And I was in training for 2 years. That's a pretty tough job. Cryptology is you basically decoding messages, and it's real technical. So it took me 2 years to go through training. Then I went to Arizona, did some more training in just outside of Tucson in Sierra Vista there. And then from there, I went to San Diego, and my first duty station was Hawaii. So I've been all over the world, Kent, twice over.
So first duty station in Hawaii. How old were you then?
I was, I was 21 years old.
Okay. And you were not married?
I was not married. I was not married at the time. No, I was married. I was married at the time. Yeah, I was married.
Yeah,
we
better get that right.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
No.
She may be listening.
I got to think back. No, I had my first child at 19. My oldest, Christina, and I always joke we grew up together. I've got 6 kids now, so but Christina and I pretty much grew up together. That time I got into Hawaii August of 2001. So I just gotten there, and then September 11th happened. So I remember being. I'm watching TV as the planes were hitting.
And where were you, in Hawaii?
I was in Hawaii.
You were up pretty early then.
I was up very early. Yeah, I'd always been kind of never really slept too much. And so I get this call from my supervisor that said, hey, get to the base. So I get to the base. This is 9/11, the day 9/11's happened in Hawaii. I get to the base. I'm one of the few crewmen that get there. And I'd been in the Navy 2 days, right? I wasn't even qualified yet. And they shut the base down. I had already gotten on board, and they go, we're going to put a plane in the air, and we're going to protect the skies of Hawaii for the state of Hawaii. So they get me in a plane. I have no idea what I'm doing, and they go, all right, you're up. And it was one of those moments that just, whether you're ready or not, sometimes you get pushed in the deep end of the pool, and it's sink or swim.
And they say you're up. What?
Yeah,
what they mean?
There's 21 people in this plane, and so normally you've got kind of like it's like a football team. You got your first string, second string. I wasn't even on the team yet. They were issuing my pads, and they're like, all right, you're starting. You're our starting wide receiver. And you're like, all right, I'm getting in there. And we were patrolling the airs, just looking for bad guys, basically.
But you were up and what did you do at that time? What position? What did they have you doing?
Yeah, my job was signals intelligence, so basically to intercept any communications. So I was listening for communications of people that were up to no good in and around Hawaii. I mean, everyone was doing this throughout the country, but ours was in Hawaii. Well, a week later, we were in Afghanistan. I remember the next morning I come in, there's a bunch of people looking at a map, and I'm like, what is everyone doing? And they're like, yeah, we're trying to figure out where the hell Afghanistan is. And a week later, I was in Afghanistan, right?
Wow.
So it was just, I had to grow up real fast.
They flew you from Honolulu to where?
At that time, I think we were based out of Oman, one of these countries off the coast there. It was terrible. It was terrible, but yeah. And then it took us a little time. We actually cleared the airfield there in Kandahar. That was first area with the Army Rangers. And then I remember landing, and I get down. Remember, I'm a young kid, and there's all these poppy fields everywhere in the middle of the airport, and it was as if I had landed on the moon. I'm just like, holy smokes! I'm no longer in Texas anymore. So yeah.
And so, how long were you in Afghanistan?
I ended up serving a total of 5 years in Afghanistan and Iraq. So 01 to 06.
You back and forth between the two countries?
We were, yeah. It was a very heavy time.
But you were reading messages, trying to decipher what the enemy was doing and saying?
Yeah. Basically, any way a person can communicate. We would joke, they send a pigeon up. We would intercept the pigeon and interrogate the pigeon on what the boss told you to say, what you were doing. So we would collect these messages, and then we'd go and find these bad guys and capture or kill them. And it was just to me, it was a time where everybody was proud to be an American, and you're just going, doesn't matter the color of your skin, where you came from, big city, small city, how much money you got in your bank account. Everybody loved the country.
What was your rank at that time?
I was a third-class petty officer about that time. I ended up, when I left, I was a first-class petty officer. So I was an E6. So I went from E4 to E6. So I was kind of, that's usually the rank that does all the work.
Yep. You do the work, and you make the trains run on time. And then you were there 5 years in one of the countries. Did you ever get any leaves to go back to San Antonio?
Yeah, I did. And the way it worked is, you'd probably out of the year, let's say you're doing 10 years, and let's say 2 months was back, maybe sprinkled throughout at different points. So you had time to come back. I always joke I was in Hawaii for 5 years. Well, my stuff was in Hawaii for 5 years. I was doing other things, but no, you had time to come back. But I do remember, I'm a big Spurs fan. Spurs are coming from growing up in San Antonio. I'm a big Spurs fan, and I remember watching because they were really good at that time. I remember watching the NBA Finals. There was one day in particular, we're about to go on a mission, and everybody knew I was a big Spurs fan. So I'm watching. It's the Detroit Pistons. I think it's Game 6 of the finals, huge game, and I'm there watching it to the very last moment. Everyone had gone, and a lot of times you got to get a plane ready before it takes off, a couple hours. And so I watch Robert Horry hit this game-winning three-pointer, and then I get my butt and I'm running. And the plane we had 4 props. 2 of them were already going, and they had the ladder down, and I'm just running up. They grab the ladder, take the ladder, and take off. But it was that level of just unity where everyone's like, no, like Tony's serious about his Spurs. Let him watch
stay
the game
as long as possible,
as long as we can, because he's been helping us catch bad guys.
So you were there 5 years, and then where'd you go?
Let's see. From there, I went to San Antonio. I went to San Antonio. There's an NSA site in San Antonio, and my plan was to get out. I was gonna, start a business and kind of settle down, and then I pick up chief. And you had mentioned this earlier. These NCOs, these non-commissioned officers, are the backbone of the Navy. And when you make chief, it's big time. It's big time. I mean, you got your own shop. You run your shop however you want to, good, bad, ugly. It's your little fiefdom, if you will. And I loved it. Boy, I loved it. And I always wanted to do things differently. So our shop ran differently, had a lot of fun. So the Navy, it's always this way. Right when you're about to get out, they give you just a little bit more and hook you back in. And then next thing you know, that turned into 20 years. And
so you served 20 years. And after Honolulu, what other places did you go?
Let's see. I went to. I was supposed to go back to Iraq for a year. Actually, got these orders to go there. I'm going through training. I'm in South Carolina, learning with the Army, learning to do different things. And then Obama, I think it was Obama during that time, did a drawback. So they ended up sending me from there to Tampa. And we used to joke we used to call it Tampistan because it was more dangerous in Tampa than it would be in Iraq. More dangerous to get in trouble, basically. So I finished my time at CENTCOM, the headquarters. So which was great about that was I had gone from being the pointy end of the spear, kind of flying and doing these missions, to all of a sudden now I was with the decision makers that were determining where things were going. So I kind of started to see the bigger picture of everything, from being out forward to now being back at the command center, building it out. After that, I go and I pre-commission the Michael Murphy. It's a new destroyer. It was out of Bath, Maine. And then after Maine, I go to Pensacola, did a little stint in Pensacola. And then I got an opportunity to go to D.C. I was the first enlisted guy to get selected for Defense Fellowship. I got an opportunity to work for Marco Rubio.
That's great. And you worked for Senator Rubio. What were you doing? Military issues?
Yep. I was his defense fellow, and I had the opportunity to write basically make the sausage, seeing the legislative process, write laws.
How did you like him?
Marco's great. Marco's a good friend. I was speaking with Marco yesterday. Marco's a good friend. He's been a good friend of mine. He's an incredible person. A couple things people don't realize about him. He's very religious. Faith plays a big part in his life, and he's very family based. I mean, his kids, he's always talking about his kids, and they come first in a lot of ways. So I love working for Marco. He's a good friend.
It's good to work for.
Yeah.
But you were assigned the Pentagon, and then you got assigned to him. He hired you.
Well, this is how it works. This is a funny thing. One, I was helping Marco's campaign when I was in Florida, just by chance. I mean, he was the first politician that really kind of spoke to me, that kind of goes, I got to get involved. So I remember showing up at his Pensacola office. He was running for president at the time. I show up there and I go, hey, I want to help Marco Rubio. First I'm going, am I in the right place? There was this little hole in the wall. I open the door, it's this high school kid or maybe college kid. And I'm going, hey, I'm here to help Marco Rubio's campaign. He's like, you're in the right spot. He goes, what are you willing to do?
He said that, or one of his staff?
His staff. This is his staff. Yeah, a little young staffer that's in charge of the Pensacola area. He goes, I'm like, yeah, whatever you need. He go, will you knock doors? I'm like, yeah, I've been, going back to my time at the Express News. I'm not afraid to knock doors. I'm like, I'll knock doors. He's like, all right, great. How many can you knock? I'm like, what do you need? Whatever you need. So this was a Tuesday. By Thursday, he's like, you're my number one volunteer. He's like, you're doing amazing. You knock calls, you do everything. He goes, Marco will be in town on Friday. Will you drive for him? I'm like, yeah, I'll drive for him. Sure. You sure you want me to drive for him? So I got to drive Marco around when he came down there. And so I didn't know where I was going, but I wanted to go into his office. So I get up to D.C. I get selected. There's 20-something of us. And you don't get to choose, Kent, where you go. They can send you to Nancy Pelosi. They can send you to Chuck Schumer. The thought process is you're in the military, you're going to be nonpartisan. And in the most partisan place on earth.
Right.
But it all worked out, and I ended up getting in Marco's office.
Let's back up just a little. You're married?
Yeah.
You have 6 children?
6 kids, yes, sir.
Your wife's name is Angel?
Angel, yeah.
And is she from San Antonio?
She's not. She's actually from Gainesville, from Florida.
So you met her in Florida?
I did. Yeah, I sure did. Yeah.
And your children are what ages?
My oldest daughter is 22, Christina. My oldest son is Jesse. He's 18. He'll be voting for the first time.
Where is he? Is he in school? Or?
Yeah, they're at UTSA in San Antonio.
Taylor Amy is the president.
Yeah.
And I hired him at Texas Tech. He's one of my employees. Guy Bailey, the president at UT Rio Grande Valley. There are 10 people I hired at Texas Tech that are now college presidents.
That's incredible.
And I'm proud of that record.
Well, I'll tell you what, UTSA is really blown up as far not only athletics but academics as well. Tier 1 research center. We do a lot of stuff with cyber. I'm a big cyber guy, so we do a lot of stuff with cyber there. So it's just absolutely incredible. And then I got younger ones. I got an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So a little bit of everything.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And let's talk about how you got into politics. At what point did you leave the Navy? What year?
Yep.
And for what reason? What were you going to do? You'd been in the Navy 20 years. That was your life.
It was, yeah. I knew I wanted to serve in public office when I was 10 years old, watching C-SPAN.
And that you really decided after working for
Marco.
Marco Rubio.
Yeah, when I got to work for Marco Rubio, I got to see the process. And honestly, Ken, I got to see a lot of people. I got to see a lot of folks that were just tired, and they were shells of themselves and probably had stayed too long. And it wasn't just Democrats. It was across the board, right. And I go, you know what? Let's jump in. Of course, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And policy is about a night and day different than politics.
Right.
And so, so I go back home to San Antonio. I finish out my year and a half that I had left. I retired. I remember people telling me, you're retiring as a Master Chief? You had made it this far. As a Master Chief, you're the biggest fish in the pond. No, I mean, you could come in with no pants on, and not one person would say a word. They're just like, yep.
That's him.
That's him, yeah. He's just going to do his deal. And then I retire, and they're going, why the heck would you do this?
But you learned a lot of leadership skills in the Navy, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, basically, 100%. The number one thing is results, not excuses. You can give an excuse all day long for the reason why you can't get something done. That ain't going to help me get it done.
Yeah.
So I want results. And so I take those same traits with me, as now I'm a member of Congress. And while I'm really proud of this, in the 117th Congress, there's been 11,000 bills that have been initiated. 11,000. Some people write them on the back of a napkin and throw it against the wall and blame the other side for why they haven't got anything done. 11,000. This year, this 117th Congress, 96 have been passed into law out of 11,000. One of those is mine. And so I'm just really proud. I push hard to be a serious legislator. Results, not excuses.
Right. What year did you get out of the Navy?
2019.
2019.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, were you ready to run for Congress? Did you know Will Hurd, who you replaced, that he wasn't going to run for re-election?
I'd never met Will before. I knew I was going to run. I'd been attending different things and trying to get up to speed on what it took to run. The Leadership Institute and some of these other organizations that try to train candidates. I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know how to do it or how to get there, and I didn't know Will. And so when he retired, it just opened up an opportunity. And a lot of times, I tell folks this all the time, sometimes you don't grip so tight to the wheel as if you know where you want to go, because God has a different plan. And sometimes that plan, let go of that wheel and it'll take you where you need to go.
Let go of the wheel. I like that. So you got out what month in 19?
July. Yep, July 19. Of 2019.
And so you filed to run
the very next month, August. Yep.
And Will Hurd had announced he wasn't going to run.
In August, yep.
And so it was a Republican, it was a Democrat district.
Yeah.
But he had won as a Republican.
Yep.
So did you go see Will and tell him you wanted to run, or that?
No, I'd never been the kiss the ring kind of guy. I'd always been, I'm going to make my own luck. That's the kind of approach I had. Now I knew there were some things I had to do to get legitimacy. Part of that is raising money. I mean, it takes money to win, and so I had built out this. And I remember, I can't remember who it was. I think it was maybe it was Henry Bonilla. That gave me this piece of advice, but he goes, if you can't identify 100 people that'll give you money, you should not run for a damn thing. I don't care what it is. So I had this list of folks that I was working through, and it's tough as nails to raise money.
Were they people that you had met along the way?
Yeah, friends.
Or were they
Friends, family,
political
colleagues.
People?
No, not one of them was a political.
Was there someone in the what? Can you remember who, looking at the list, who's the richest guy that you were going to call on?
Not really. They all were kind of hard.
They might
military.
give you $100 or $500, but
exactly.
There wasn't anybody.
No,
there
was no big. $100 would be a big check. $500 would be a big check. So I kind of grind my way to putting up $100,000 on the board, and just a nickel at a time. But really, that's where now you're out of magic. There ain't no more magic beans. You're out of beans. And I had been, in Texas politics, everybody knows Susan Lilly is the absolute best at everything that, if you're gonna run a serious campaign, Susan Lilly is the one that you want to have on your team.
She knows how to raise money. She's excellent. And her dad was Steve Lilly.
Yeah.
And when I switched parties in '85, he welcomed me to Nacogdoches, and he got a group together to let me speak. And she happened to be a child, and she came along and listened. We've been good friends ever since. But her dad was of the old school precinct chairman, county chairman, and did the nuts and bolts that most people won't do.
That's right.
And help build a party. I would say if you listed the top 100 or even just top 50 people in the state that helped build the party, Steve Lilly would be one of the guys. And he really did a lot. And she's been good for the party and good organization. And so who told you to go see her?
Only everybody I met.
So you go see her and you say, I'm running for Congress. I need some help.
Wasn't that easy. So first off, you know this, and everyone that works with her knows she's a winner. And that's the biggest thing that she does is win. And so she only takes winners. She ain't taking a loser. So, everyone's going, you got to meet Susan. You got to meet Susan. She's got to be on your team if you have any chance. I'm like, who the heck is it? I didn't know. Who the heck is this Susan Lilly? And so she wouldn't take my call, believe it or not, Kent. She wouldn't take my call. So I had to cash the rest of the magic beans that I had. I put them all in to get on a call with her. And so she finally takes my call and, asked me a few different questions. And she goes, okay, I will meet you tomorrow morning in Austin in my office. I'm like, okay, great. I got the meeting. All right, this is going to be great. We'll get her hired. We'll get one. It'll be great. I show up, and I swear she had me in this little baby chair, and she's in this high chair. So it's at this angle.
You're looking up.
I'm just looking up in this small chair, and she's just, grilling me, asking question after question. And I start thinking, I'm like, wait, am I hiring her or is she hiring me? And it took me a little bit later on to go, oh, she was hiring you, Tony.
Yeah.
You weren't hiring anybody. And you know what?
She wanted to know, and I've done this with young people come see. She wanted to know what I want to know. Are they dedicated?
Yeah, that's right.
Or, when it gets tough, are they just going to drop out?
That's right. That's exactly right. Because you know what? She's dedicated, and she's going to put the time and effort into it. And you know this. You can't be working harder than the candidate or the member. I mean, when it becomes that way, you're carrying all the weight. It's not going to go well. It's only a matter of time before it doesn't go well. So that was a good moment. And then, she just believed in me, and we started raising the resources, putting together a professional team. I didn't know what the hell I was doing at the time, and put together this professional team. And we go on and win this race by 4 points. It was great.
Will had won that race before, but he had never won by 4 points.
You know what? We won by more votes than all 3 of his wins put together.
Yeah.
And when I ran, everyone goes, you got to run a certain way, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I go, here's the deal. How about I just be who I am? And people will like me, they won't like me, they'll agree with me, or they won't agree with me.
To thine own self be true.
That's right. But they'll know, hey, Tony's not going to BS me. He's going to be who he is. And so that's what I did. And I put 70,000 miles on my pickup truck that first election. Just went everywhere. And one place in particular was Eagle Pass. I announced my run. The first stop was Eagle Pass. I drive 2.5 hours out there, and everyone's going, Tony, there's no Republicans in Eagle Pass, right along the border, Maverick County. And they go, look, it took Will 3 cycles to get to 22% of the vote. What are you doing? And I'm going, I'm not talking to Republicans. I'm talking to everybody. And this is a place that had been forgotten. And over the course of that election, we went there 22 times.
How many people voted in the Republican primary?
Oh, about 100. It wasn't many, but it wasn't. But I didn't. The Republican primary wasn't what I was worried about. I was worried about the general, and because if you win the nominee,
who did you beat in the primary?
I beat 8 other people.
There were 9 running in the Republican primary to replace Will Hurd.
Yep, they sure were.
Wow.
Yep. And I got a case of shrunken heads of every one of them in my office. Everyone that laces them up, we shrink their head and put them in the case.
That's hilarious. And so, did you have a runoff?
I had a runoff.
And who was the runoff?
Oh, it was a brutal process. We had a runoff, and then that runoff, there was 25,000 votes cast, and I ended up winning that runoff by 7 votes. 7 out of 25,000. And so then we have a recount, and you know this.
Where was your opponent from?
He was from Del Rio. No, he was from Del Rio. And so, this. Election day, your name's on the ballot. You're nervous. You've got butterflies. And so imagine having 30 days of election day as these recounts is coming in. We're up by 7. Oh, we're up by 5. We're up by 9. We're by, just this deal. And so we end up winning by 42 after it was all said and done. But and we were dead broke every step of the way. So that's why they're like, oh, Tony, you don't stand a chance. I think it was after Labor Day. I'm dead broke, had just gone through a 9-way primary, a runoff, a recount, and we're going against this juggernaut on the other side that Nancy Pelosi was saying, if we win 1 seat, it's going to be Gina Jones in Texas 23. And we beat her.
You beat the Democrat. What the percentage was? 52-48.
It was 50. It was 50.6 to 46.6.
Okay.
So we beat her by 4 points, and also it was the first time in this district that someone had gotten over 50% in 12 years since 2012. So I was really proud of that too.
Yeah, you got over. Will had been winning and not even getting 50% of the vote because you had a Libertarian, you had Green Party, you had different people running.
Yeah, look, it's a tough district. It's a tough district.
Where were you on election night?
So part of my routine is, and this is part of who I am, is I spend the day in the district going to as many polling stations as I can. And so that day, I think we had visited 11 counties. I got 29 counties in the district. And so we had gone all the, Rock Springs and Sonora and Del Rio, Eagle Pass, Uvalde, all these different places. But San Antonio was where it was on election night.
And you won, and then people started calling you.
Oh,
that you'd never heard of before.
That's right.
And you raised some money. You got, you didn't have much debt because you couldn't go borrow money.
Yeah, no, we immediately, because especially in this district, you never stop running. It's never over. So we immediately started retooling and getting ready for this cycle. And so, and it's not just about money. It's about going to places that no one goes to and not showing up 2 weeks before the election. Showing up over and over, and not just showing up, but actually delivering. You worked
the rural area really hard. And when I ran for state senate first time, 50% of the people lived in Lubbock.
Yeah.
25% lived in Odessa, and 25% lived in the rural areas.
Uh-huh.
And I had a professor do a study on where most of the votes came from. And even though 25% lived in the rural area, they voted an average of 42% of the votes. So I went to all those little towns because they knew if you were there. They cared.
They did.
And it was important. And then you got to Washington, and you did something no freshman does or should. The gall of you to even think about it was what most people were thinking. And you got on appropriations. I was so impressed.
That was a lot of fun because that's the game within the game. And so I knew I wanted to be on appropriations before I even ran. Henry Bonilla, longtime member who served this district, good friend of mine. As a matter of fact, I sat with Henry before I even announced I was going to run. And one of the questions I asked him was, now, Henry, how the heck did you get on appropriations? He got on appropriations when he was a freshman. And so he came to that story. He's basically luck. But we walked through it. And so I get up there, and now everyone's going, now, Tony, you're a freshman. You can't get on appropriations. Now, you just got to sit here, wait your turn. Bide your time. Maybe someday you can be like me. And I go, I've always believed in making my own luck. I go, here's the deal. I'm going to get on appropriation. I'm going to push hard. And so I remember I sat with one member, and he's on the steering committee. There's about 20 people that determine your fate.
Steering committee is the committee that selects what committee you're going to be on.
That's exactly
and
right.
That's made up of leadership.
Yep.
Okay.
As leadership as well as people from all different geographical regions. That's right. So I sit with one of these members. He was a friend, and he goes, "Well, hell, Tony, where's your push card? Just like you would in a campaign." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You're running for. It's no different than running for something else. You need a push card that you're running for appropriations. Why should I vote for you? You don't even have a push card." And so I'm like, "That's a damn good point." So I called Susan. I go, "Hey, we need a push card." She's like, "On it." That night, printed out some push cards from Kinko's. The very next morning, there I am walking around giving these steering committee members my push card. And the same guy goes, "All right." He's like, "Here's the deal. You got some hustle. Now, you ain't going to get on appropriations, but I appreciate the hustle." And we just worked it.
Yeah, and you got on.
We got on.
And what subcommittees are you on?
I'm on transportation and HUD, which is great for roads and airports and these things. And then the other one is military construction and veteran affairs.
And that's so important to San Antonio.
It is. Lackland Air Force Base is in the district. Laughlin
over at Del Rio.
In Del Rio is in the district. Yep. I even got Fort Bliss out in El Paso.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
I mean, major.
Your district, you've got part of San Antonio. What part of San Antonio do you have?
Pretty much a moon. I've got about 40% of Bexar County. It's pretty much a moon shape around. If you looked at the county, it's pretty much a moon. Everything outside of 1604.
And you got part of the eastern part of El Paso.
Yeah, and I got about 60% of El Paso County. Parts of the city, but pretty much everything that's outside of the city. It's a huge territory to cover.
Yeah. You've got an opponent again. You're always going to have an opponent in that district, and you're out campaigning. Things are going well. What's been the biggest surprise in serving in Congress?
The biggest surprise is how much time you're spent on a plane. I mean, you're just always traveling. You're either on a plane, getting off a plane, or getting ready to get on a plane. I mean,
Angel and the children are in San Antonio.
They are.
So you go on Mondays to
Yep.
Washington when y'all are in session.
That's
come
right.
back on Thursdays.
That's
or
exactly
Fridays.
right. That's exactly right. And you know what? The only way this works is my mother lives with us, and my mother helps raise the children. She is the backbone of it all. She keeps everything together. And so we got this system. And it reminds me a lot of the military, where they go, hey, you go deploy, go fight the wolves, and then come back home. But don't forget the milk and eggs before you come back home. And guess what? We don't care who you met or who you talked with. In here, grab a child, get a diaper, grab a bottle, get in the fight. So it's good. Keep me grounded.
The issues, you have a lot of issues coming before Congress. You've done travel, and you've traveled to other parts of the world. And anyone on appropriations, especially defense, military, you need to travel.
You do.
You need to be there in wherever it is, Oman or wherever, and see what they're investing their money in.
Yeah, I do a lot of travel. I mean, being in the Navy, I've been all over the world twice over, been in a lot of places. But as a member of Congress, I've visited 12 countries. And there's two in particular that I'd like to mention. One was I got the opportunity to visit India and meet with Prime Minister Modi. And so we're sitting there, and I go, this was with John Cornyn and some other folks. And when Cornyn was some other senators, when he was putting this trip together, I go, now, John, I'll carry your bags if you'll let me get on this trip. He goes, we'll get you on the trip. So we get on the trip, and Senator Cornyn has always done a good job. He could be there and he could have taken all the time, but instead of doing that, he let everybody in the trip get a piece of the time to talk to the prime minister. So they're going down the list. All the senators are going first, and then it's on me, and I'm kind of last to go. What are you going to ask? Here is the head of the state, one of the largest countries. And I brought two things up. I brought up cyber. I go, one of the most valuable commodities a nation has is its people. And we started to talk about cyber, and his eyes popped up. The other thing I brought up was natural gas. I go, look, I'm from Texas. Oil and gas is very important to us. And, I'd love to have a conversation on it. His eyes perked up, and he's going, how do I get more of that Texas natural gas? And we're going to be green by 20, whatever y'all want us to be. But today, can I get some natural gas?
Yeah, I still got to supply people.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. And I think it's obvious to me how you got elected and your personality. There was an event that Susan Lilly had at the Headliners Club. And I went to that event, and I met you.
Yes.
And I was really impressed and told her so, and then wrote a little note after you got elected, selected for Appropriations Committee. Freshman on Appropriations, you got a bright future. How old are you now?
I just turned 42.
You're 42, and you may wind up being chairman of Appropriations someday.
Oh, my goodness.
So that'd be great for the state of Texas. I just want to thank you. And the saying of the day was...
results, not excuses.
That's good. We like it. Ken Hance, best storyteller in Texas. I bring in good people to interview. Tony Gonzales, congressman that he's got Southwest Texas. It goes from El Paso to San Antonio. He's got Del Rio, Eagle Pass. You got a lot of places out there. Big Bend. The Big Bend's all your territory.
42% of the southern border.
That is I'm going to finish on that. That's a terrible situation.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening? Are they ever going to realize that there's an invasion, that we've been, invaded?
Yeah, that's the sad part of it. Part of how I got here is just going to all these places over and over again, and I don't stop doing that. We did a football game. I do a lot of football games on Friday nights. A good shot in the arm. We went to Gonzales and Sabinal, right? And so I go there. I do the coin toss. Like any good politician, I work one side, one half, and I work the other side, the second half. So I work the first half. We're talking with the superintendent. We're going over all these different things. And then, he calls up the Gonzales superintendent. He's like, hey, meet me at the scoreboard, and now you can get a piece of Tony now, right? So we meet at the scoreboard, and he starts taking me over. And this is what life is like. He goes, we're sitting talking. This was just a few days ago, essentially. And he goes, I'm, hey, what's going on with the border, this, that, and the other. And I know, but I want to hear from them. He goes, you wouldn't believe this, Tony. We were having a football game 2 weeks ago. We're in the middle of this football game, and all of a sudden there's a high-speed chase that happens right behind the field next to us. Car crashes. 5 people get out. They're running across the field. Police stop, are chasing them. Everyone's watching the game going, what the heck is going on? This is what life is like along the border. I mean, it's pure chaos. I mean, immigration, legal or otherwise, not new to us. We've had to deal with this a long time. It's never been like this. I was just in Del Rio. We went to a rodeo, one of the most fun events of the year. You go to this rodeo in Del Rio, and just the number of people that are coming over every day, and it's not only people trying to flee and for a better life, and I get that, but it's also these bad actors that nobody wants in their community. I visited, kind of going back to visiting other countries, I visited Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador a couple months ago. No member of Congress had visited the Northern Triangle in 3 years. Completely wrong. So I visit Honduras, one of the poorest countries I've ever been to. But when I was in El Salvador, they're cracking down on criminals right now. That president has jailed 50,000 gang members, okay? He's going, no.
Where is that?
El Salvador.
El Salvador.
50,000 people, he has put them in jail. They're like sardines in these jails. So what does that mean? If you're a gang member in El Salvador, you're getting the hell out of El Salvador. Because guess what? You're going to get arrested. So they're making the trek down to the United States. This is the part where I don't get where the administration, they've abandoned us. They've abandoned Texas. They've abandoned anyone along the border, and it's a reason why they're going to get their butts kicked here in November.
Well, that sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What a delight it's been. I wish you the best. I have the utmost confidence, and the only problem with Tony Gonzales, there's not enough of you.
Thank you, sir.
We wish we had more congressmen like you. God bless you and your family.
Yes, sir.
And we'll have a lot of people be praying for you.
All right. Thank you, sir. God bless you.